So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Tzayelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end as per Yershiyahu the prophet. We find layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries. As we read then Yershiyahu the prophet, we must always make the question, why then Israel has destroyed its own prophets? And then from then on we have to understand also the conveniences that the nation wanted, thus then destroying its own prophets. However, because we are then during the time of the restoration period, then we are reading the Torah, obviously, and the prophets, and the writings, and what the Messiah has done as far as his holy cities, and what he has then recorded himself. Speaking of Yohanan, regarding then the documents on behalf of the holy cities. And what's going on then in the world? We were talking previously as far as what it takes to get then personal victory away from any kind of a family understanding, because it always hinders the work of the kingdom. And what's going on in the world. So then for us then to become people and directing nations, what can we understand of Daniel the 11th chapter? Obviously Daniel was a minister. He was then the financial CEO of his time, and he worked under many kings. As we read then, this prophet Daniel explains then a period of time where then the sons of Ishmael are going then to become a people of great authority and power. So then, let's make an evaluation as far as why then Ishmael, or the sons of Ishmael, are in such a great powerful position. It's very simple, because the first son has then a half of the anointing, as then Abraham had a relationship with the Egyptian Hagar. So amazingly the Creator has decided of having then the sons of Ishmael gathering themselves again in Egypt. We can read this very precisely in the 11th chapter of Daniel in verses 8 and 9, where then these sons of Ishmael, they gathered in Egypt, and then from then on they marched then south. But because of these, what is going on as far as then Palestine? What is going on in the Arab nations? These are gathering themselves. These are obviously, a great portion of them are the sons of Ishmael. And at some point in time, the sons of Ishmael, they are going to obviously take over the nation of Israel, at least great portions of it. And we find these in Daniel the 11th chapter. But there is a compensation for this. The Creator himself is not going to leave Israel by itself. Oh no, there are the steps of formation, and we can find these very precisely on Daniel the 11th chapter. So let's read then where is the section related with the invasion of the land of Israel. Let's find these, because it's extremely important for us to make these establishment. So then, but he wilt do, and he then obviously who those are coming against him, he shall then win, and none shall stand before him. Explaining then the sons of Ishmael. And he shall stand in a glorious land, and destruction in his hand. So then, explaining then the sons of Ishmael, obviously going against the first holy city on the land of Cush, and because the city is fortified, then they are asking themselves why they can't take over the city on the land of Cush. Then the Ishmaelites, they turn around, and then themselves, then they go north to conquer then Israel, and they shall win. However, portions of the area of the temple, where the temple is at, the Ishmaelites are going to let only the tent that Moses then received on the desert, the schematic of the temple, and what they had built in the temple in the desert, so shall to be then re-established on Mount Moriah. Only the tent. Now, we do understand on the top of the temple, where it used to be the temple, there is then a mosque. There's a Muslim shrine that was there built many centuries earlier. Now, it does explain then at some point the Ishmaelites are going to take over the land. And obviously when we read this section, the only true way of having tabernacling there is at where the temple was at. Now, as far as is then the mosque going to be destroyed to give then place for the tabernacling? Because we understand there won't be a third temple. Whatsoever desires, you can understand this. Myself, and then, as a Jew, yet in a conversion, and then watching my own people, it has become my own family, there's such a great desire for the third temple and the unification with our God. It is very powerful. But the Creator then is holding back because He wants His people then to cherish this desire, as the Messiah explains, as a bride in the day of the relationship, the day of the matrimony. So the Creator is not going to satisfy our people, our Hebrew people, during this age. What He is going to give us is then duties, and we must perform these duties as per His instructions. So then we leave this age with this desire incomplete, and only to be satisfied when the new earth is then established. So it is truly starting making sense. Now, there are sections on Mount Moriah, for instance, the Dome of the Spirits. There is some type of a monument there that the Ishmaelites have built. Nicely built, in fact. And precisely where this tiny dome is at is where the Holy of Holies should be at. So it doesn't take much for a person then to understand that the tent is going to be right there. Let me say these again. On the land of Israel, on Mount Moriah, is where then Yahweh our God is teaching us. There is a monument there named then the Dome of the Spirits. Precisely the base of this monument is where stands the elevator shaft where the Holy of Holies was at. So it doesn't take very much for you to understand where then the tent is going to be at. The Ark of the Covenant was already discovered many years ago. It was in 82. And the Israelites, they have the Ark of the Covenant in Israel. And there is another portion of this understanding when Queen of Sheba, she visited King of Solomon. And then he made affinity with the daughter of Pharaoh. So let's make sure we understand. There are a few situations going on. There was a holy ark on the land of Cush, because the Ethiopians, they went to visit then King Solomon, and he was able then to make a copy of the Ark of the Covenant and brought to the region of Ethiopia, where then in ancient times was then the geographical area of Ethiopia was then parts of Cush that we know of as today. That's why the legend of having then the Ark of the Covenant in Ethiopia. It is true. The Ark was there, but not the original Ark. It was a copy used in the first holy city where Yohanan was at. So when you begin to read, and we understand then, quote unquote, when a person is navigating through the instructions and the prophets and the writings and what the Messiah has done, and most importantly, the holy cities of the Messiah while he was then in charge of directing the nations for 1,000 years, then we understand the flow of this information. Now we know that there are sections on Mount Moriah that is going to be removed. As per the instructions, you find then the Holy of Holies is where then this Dome of the Spirit is at. Prior of making this discovery, I thought myself that the Holy of Holies was inside of the Dome of the Rock. And afterwards, many years after, then studying more and more and more, I discovered then the Holy of Holies is outside. So when we read then, for instance, Revelation, where then God someday He's going to show then His glory, you can understand that the tent is going to be in a place where this Dome of the Spirits is at. But you can be sure of it, the Ishmaelites, they won't let Israel build the third temple. It won't be built. Not on this holy site. And the Ishmaelites are very powerful people. They are desert people. And they are going to do precisely what they are set to do. At some point in the future, the only exception is then they're going to let the Hebrews set up the tent where the Holy of Holies is at. That's the only exception. Now, many of our brothers, the Hebraic people, they are thinking themselves they're going to build some sort of a temple. They won't. They may have a building somewhere far away from Israel at their own choices, but on Mount Moriah they won't build. So as far as the menorah, golden menorah, and the articles, and what the Levites are preparing themselves, and the sacrificial crazy idea of theirs, won't be done. Now, they may decide to build this temple somewhere else. So then we understand the abomination that makes desolate is then Israel, or the unbelieving Israel, trying then to re-establish the sacrificial system. And the Creator Himself has named the abomination that makes desolate because these areas of sacrifices were already completed. Now, explains the holy instructions. They are going to set up some sort of sacrificial system because this is what it makes the desolation. Because the unbelieving Israel makes the whole situation reversed, where then there is no meaning anymore of salvation and the Messiah coming. And the Messiah Himself has said, and when you observe the abomination that makes desolate, He explains they are going to build somewhere some sort of rituals of their own. But when the Messiah Himself said many centuries ago, not a stone is going to be left upon another, as far as Mount Moriah, there won't be a third temple. And the Creator is holding back this desire of His people of having a relationship with Him in its entirety. He's holding back for when the new earth then is re-established. Then the Messiah is going to give the satisfaction of those who are reuniting with Him. Now, as far as where the unbelieving Hebrews are going to build this building, then we should watch the news very closely. Now, as far as reading Revelation, then the voice said, "Believe then the courtyard for the Gentiles." So can you understand? Then leave the courtyard for the Gentiles because it's theirs. So can you understand, as the Holy of Holies is already there, and then the tent around it, and the dimensions of the tabernacle is very tiny. The size of it is then 30 cubits by 10. And then obviously the courtyard, the place that is outside, is of the Gentiles because they are already there. But there is a direct link with Israel trying to build some sort of a building for what they desire so much as the third temple, and then becomes an abomination that makes desolate. So sections of Revelation we already know. Now the section that we are waiting for is where they are going to build this crazy building. Because at the point in time they build this building becomes the abomination that makes desolate. Because the whole situation, the whole sacrificial system the Creator has created, and Israel had to go through these until the Messiah came, then because of lack of knowledge and the desire for convenience and power, they want to re-establish these, but becomes an abomination that makes desolate. So then the nations are truly trying to find some sort of a reason for this end of times. Now let me say this to you. If you do not have the knowledge of tabernacling, whatsoever a person can think of, it makes no sense. Because in a world without tabernacling, the world is lost. So then are the people. Later on, I'm going to investigate more then in the 11th chapter, so then we can redirect to the nations as the Messiah himself did during his time of 1,000 years. So please stay tuned. Much more coming up.